Zombie Jesus Day, or however you choose to celebrate it.
I love that.
I celebrate by wearing pastels and talking about Star Trek.
Right? That's how you do it.
Yeah, exactly. How are you doing?
I'm good. Sorry, I was just making sure Twitch was muted when I
Oh,
pulled it
yeah.
up.
No
I'm
worries.
good. I'm good. It's Sunday. It's still the weekend. Life is fine.
Always, always a bonus. Hey, Baka, good to see you. Um, so we have a really good set of episodes. Once we got into this, I was like fully invested. Um, we are going to be talking about, so we're in season 5 of Deep Space Nine. We're going to be doing episode 13 through 18, which is For the Uniform, In Purgatory's Shadow, By Inferno's Light, Dr. Bashir, I presume, A Simple Investigation, and Business as Usual. And we were saying earlier, there's really only one kind of clunker.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, which is great because I have a feeling we have so much to talk about on the others that
Yeah.
we can at least, they can't all be
Just
masterpieces.
gloss. Right.
Hello, Yoga redeemed hydrate, so I'm hydrating. And Andy's in the chat as well, so hi everyone. All right, shall we?
Yeah.
All right, let's do it. So the first episode is For the Uniform. This is where Michael Eddington is back. And he, remember, was the Starfleet officer who defected to the Maquis. And basically Cisco goes all Moby Dick Javert on him and tries to hunt him down. And may or may not commit war crimes in the process. Which is what we're here to talk about today. We had the Eddington reveal, I think earlier this season or the end of last season, but
I think earlier this season,
yeah,
from what I recall.
And I think if I remember, you were not surprised.
No, not really. It seemed to match his character. Eddington, he's got kind of a I put in the notes here, like, I think it was an acting choice, but he kind of comes across as a little sociopathic. Like, he just doesn't emote, and from what I remember from this episode, it's actually a little foggy. I watched this, like, I think last Sunday. Either Cisco accuses him of not really believing in the cause, or he actually doesn't, and he's just there to put a needle in Starfleet's side. Maybe I'm misremembering that because he was also about, like, look at all these refugees, that we're helping, and Cisco's like, I think Cisco tries to say, you're doing this for you, not them.
Yeah, I think a lot of it was so I think there are some layers there that are getting a little bit mixed together because they had the whole episode with Cassidy Yates and kind of why she was involved with the Maquis, which I think was a little more along those lines. But I think certainly with him, what drove him to the Maquis was a desire to see Starfleet suffer.
Yeah.
And yeah. And then I do think he's invested in the cause. But yeah.
Yeah, so that is an interesting layer that's of a character that would do that kind of thing. But yeah, I don't like him, which is good to sum up.
Fair enough. Yeah, Baca says it wasn't a war; those were crimes against humanity, which is, I think, also a fair take. It just depends, I guess, on how you perceive Starfleet's relationship with the Maquis, because it feels very terrorist organization-y. You're at war, but you're not technically claiming war, which we have seen many times.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's interesting too. Like, that gets brought up, in this episode with Cisco, and how Eddington needles him with the whole Les Miserables metaphors, which I thought was actually kind of spot on.
Yeah.
And Cisco, I feel like it seems like on a subconscious level, he knows that he's being totally Moby Dick about this.
Yeah.
But but consciously he's like literally unable to see past the complete I put it in my notes, see past his personal affrontal that Eddington made this decision to join the Maquis. It's like he's taking it as a personal attack.
I think that's the biggest aspect, that he really feels like he's not even that he was let down, but that it happened under his nose, you know, that. Yeah.
Exactly. So he's showing some, you know, personality traits of, how did I let this happen? This is a personal offense.
Yeah. And the funny thing is there's a couple, hey, Laura and DS9er fan, welcome. Baca mentioned that Eddington could also be deeply PTSD and not trusting the Federation therapists or whatever we have ship's counselors that have a bit of a vague role. But the other thing that I thought about this was the fact that like they're referencing Les Mis, which is a little bit of a deeper cut because it's not as culturally relevant, I think, as Moby Dick. But there's already exists Star Trek First Contact where Picard gets called out for being very Moby Dick, literally with that white whale analogy. So I have a sense like that they were like, "Ooh, we need another analogy because we've already used that."
The Moby Dick sort of analogy comes up a lot for the captains.
It does, which I mean, it's valid. It's there is that.
But so with the Les Mis thing, to continue on that, I kind of loved how Sisko ended up using that to his advantage. You know, he clearly wasn't, he was reading it at the end, so he wasn't that familiar with the story, but he knew enough, or he got to know enough to be like, how do you, Eddington sees himself in this story. He sees himself as Javert and the hero of this story. So how can we catch him using that, Eddington's blindness about himself, you know? So I need to actually become Javert, or not Javert. What is it?
Oh God,
what's his name?
It's been a long time. I didn't write down all my Les Mis.
Anyway, I'm getting them mixed up.
Chat brain can hop in with
please.
That
chat help. I'm not looking at the chat still. So, but that was interesting. You put in your notes, to catch a villain, you need to become a villain.
Yeah,
and that was a very interesting storyline.
It's dark. You know, this is as someone who has repeatedly fallen into best captain debates that, as many of us Star Trek fans know, can get a little bit heated. This is definitely the one where people will, but about Sisko, but literal, war crimes.
Interesting.
This is a pretty brutal one. Jean Valjean. Thank you. God, I can't believe I spaced that. That was Baca. Thank you. Also, hi, Bad Panda.
24601.
This is the war crime one.
So when you say war crimes, though, you texted me that before I watched the episode, and so I was sort of looking out for it, and I couldn't tell what part you meant. Do you mean when he shot down the ship and beamed Eddington aboard?
I was referring to the desire to burn an entire planet and make it uninhabitable for anyone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, where
that makes sense. Yeah.
Basically is like, all right, well, because that's what Eddington was threatening to do, right? Is that he's basically like, I'm going to destroy this entire Federation planet, and then Sisko's basically grabs his own grenade and he's like, if you do that, I'll do that. And I think, he certainly triggers the entire evacuation of the Maquis colony.
So I guess that's where I was confused. He triggers that by actually destroying a planet.
It's always I have it in my mind that he destroys the planet, and then every time I watch the episode, it does become a little bit but did he? Did I miss that? Because it is a little bit vague, but that's certainly the intent. You know, the intent was that he was gonna.
He could get to that place and to be able to act, because he was serious.
Yeah, he poisoned the atmosphere. It's not ideal.
Not ideal.
So but I think this is a good one to kind of because the next episode is where, obviously, we now kick off the Dominion War, which was kind of at a Cold War status for a while. This is a good way to kind of tie up the Maquis line for a little while, you know?
Yeah.
So it kind of like wraps that bow that Eddington, they have had their confrontation. They've had their Les Mis, Moby Dick, you know.
Confrontation is an actual name of a song from the musical, so that's awesome.
There you go. So yeah, it's so I think it succeeds in that. Hi, Brad. Yeah, Baca says Eddington poisons Cardassian worlds in the Federation, and then Cisco independent human colonies that have broken off from Cardassia, if I remember my space politics at the time. There's a lot of space politics to remember.
Gotta love it.
But yes, thank you. All right. So, yes. Any last ones on this one?
Nope, I don't think so.
Oh, now we get to the reveal. This is where I start watching Deep Space Nine, and then I can't stop watching Deep Space Nine. Like, I put it on, and I'm like, can't look away. So
yeah, you texted me like, we put 1 on, and then we watched 3.
Yeah. So just to remind people, this is In Purgatory's Shadow and By Inferno's Light, which are 2-part episodes. So we'll kind of talk about them together as one story. Essentially, this is where Garrick receives a coded message from an Abrantane who he thought had died, but is being sent as a prisoner in the Gamma Quadrant. So Garrick and Worf go through to find Tane and any other survivors that they had thought had died with an Abrantane. Worf basically, once they get through, they realize that the Dominion fleet has assembled on the other side and is about to invade the Alpha Quadrant. Once they do get taken prisoner, they get taken to a Jem'Hadar prison colony, and they discover Martok and Bashir bum 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 are being held prisoner, and like Martok has been there like literally the whole time, so any Martok we met previously was not Martok, which is brilliant. DS9 tries to close the wormhole, but it ends up staying open, and the whole fleet of ships come through. So the Dominion has now invaded the Alpha Quadrant. Da da da. End of part 1. Part 2, Gul Dukat basically joins the Dominion as Cardassia as like a 1984 evil dictator way. Garrick is trying to help them escape by confronting his claustrophobia inside the walls, which we're going to talk all about too. Worf fights the Jem'Hadar, refusing to surrender, and then Changeling Bashir almost destroys Deep Space Nine, but they blow him up before he can get there, and then they finalize a peace treaty with the Klingons.
Whoa!
It's a lot. It's a lot. Laura in the chat is very, very excited to hear your reactions to these. We have Changeling Bashir, dun dun dun. And then Bad Panda, so said, from what I remember. And then Baca says, okay, everyone in the chat is trying to remember.
I know what they're asking.
When Bashir was actually kidnapped and how long we've had Changeling Bashir with us. And if you go to the Changeling Bashir Memory Alpha page, it is not clear.
Oh, God.
Yes. So Laura said he was on his way home from a burn conference because, of course, on Mizan 4, but they don't say where in the story that was. He just says he's been there for a month, and then obviously when he gets back, or I think in the next episode, when he gets back, O'Brien is like kind of confronts him about that he was hanging out. I didn't notice the difference. Thanks, Astro. So oh god, where do we even start? I mean, I guess we should just start with the Bashir thing. So we had Bashir Changeling.
I know, and I thought that no, I did not see it coming at all. I thought the same thing as everybody. I was like, well, wait, for how long? Like, that was the first thing in my head. How long has this imposter of Bashir been on DS9? But that was a really fun reveal when they show up at the colony, and Martok's there too. So it kind of clued in this this whole insidious setup that they have. They kidnap these people, they bring them the real people and keep them there, and then they implant changelings where they were. It's just like, oh.
Which I was gonna ask you, because you had felt for a while that like they had set up this whole idea that changelings had infiltrated and then never really came back to that. And they were like, oh, it's a Maquis, it's this, and like people kind of dropped the whole changeling thing. So was this a satisfying return?
Very, very much so. Because I was like, okay, so they are like circling back to this core. What's so far what seems to me as the core of DS9 is that it's the Dominion founders, changelings, doing this infiltration game, long game. And I guess it was definitely a payoff of, okay, it felt to me like this has been a long game. Like they're using these colonies to keep the real people. Who knows what they're going to do with the real people? I was sort of assuming they killed them, but they're not. So that was cool. And then, yeah.
Love it. So what it said on the Memory Alphas, it had some various interviews, and I think it was Ronald D. Moore who said that Bashir had been there since Rapture, which is where Sisko was getting the visions, which basically means that implies that Changeling Bashir performed surgery, the life-saving surgery on Sisko.
Whoa.
And if that's true, then he also helped save the changeling infant, which makes sense story-wise, and also delivered the O'Brien's baby around the same time. So those are all like three major things that it could have been Changeling Bashir doing.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's awesome.
It's like unclear with the changelings if they're like, if they care about blending in completely, right? Like I said, like with Martok, it was kind of a joke that I was like, if he just talked about honor more, they wouldn't find him out. But it's kind of true. Like if he had pretended to be a better Klingon, he could have stayed infiltrated more longer. And with Bashir, he maybe seems to the changeling for Bashir takes his acting craft a little more seriously, because he's like he saved Sisko's life. Obviously we don't know if he did anything else, like but so I guess I'm just curious, like, what their actual game is. It seems like they're all a little different.
So a couple things in the chat. Baka said, good medics, those changelings. That Andy then said, so is this an indictment against the real Bashir or O'Brien that he didn't notice the difference? Then also, happy birthday, Wayward Sojourner. DS9er says it means the changeling was good at their job. And then, just a lot of digs at O'Brien and Bashir's relationship.
Right. So I guess for DS9, like, was the changeling good at his changeling job, or was he good at Bashir's job?
Or both.
Or both.
He was so invested in it. Maybe there was another way to save Sisko's life without stopping the visions. That could be. There could be a whole bunch of things. Laura says, I felt like Changeling Bashir was playing a longer game, but his timeline was moved up and the mission changed when Garrick and Worf altered the station altered the timeline. Altered the timeline and warned the station about the fleet, which makes sense because he's in there and they're moving. I mean, that is the whole thing, is that like the Dominion is making their move into the Alpha Quadrant. So. So good. So good. Okay, so big reveal on Changeling Bashir, and wrapped up pretty nicely, I think, with a good bow. Let's talk about Garrick in this episode. So Garrick is going to save Enabrin Tain, who's essentially his dad, right? They kind of get into that a little bit.
Well, it seemed like it was not essentially. It seemed like it was like actual.
It's his father. Like, sorry, I'm reading a little bit into the extended canon. my own Garrick brain. But yeah, I mean, he's his father, gotcha. And so so they have that, and then we get Garrick and Zeal, which for Garrick fangirls is very nice to see, because we just need content like that injected into our eyeballs more and more.
Totally.
But I'm wondering how you felt about them. I'm wondering how you felt about them.
Yeah, I know you saw my note. I love them together. Like I would be totally okay with it. Or I am totally okay with it. But part of me kind of wishes they had gone like the strong friendship route as opposed to the romantic route with them. Like there's just something I feel like might have been more interesting and stronger with that. I'm not sure I quite get the chemistry. I mean, they have chemistry. Mm-hmm. They have clear chemistry, but something in me thinks it would be more fun to watch if they were like close friends as opposed to romantic. I'm not sure why.
That's fair. But, I mean, I think that they definitely lean into the power dynamic with the age gap a little bit, mm-hmm. and I think successfully, where Garrick says those things that someone in that relationship should be aware of just saying, like, don't throw everything away. This is not all worth that, you know. It's nice that you're in love, and I like you too, but it's not the end all be all. So they do have a little bit of that dynamic.
They do. And I think you hit it on the head. I think it's because she is so young, and I kind of want her to grow independently and have, like, I don't know, it feels like she's jumping right into a relationship with someone who looks like her.
Yeah.
Because she's obviously, craving that and that kind of Cardassian connection. But I kind of wish she'd, I don't know, grow more as herself first or something.
But I just think that's classic. Yeah, like that's what people do.
Of course.
But I like too that the Garrick is very aware of that. Like he says out straight out that he's like, look, I'm aware that I provide you something, but you also provide me with something. Like the scene in the sort of holodeck, I thought it's really sweet.
That's a completely redeeming quality of the whole plot line for me is Garrick's sort of honesty about everything.
Yeah. The man who can communicate.
Oh, yes.
So Laura said something hilarious in the chat about the Garrick Bashir shippers, and if you are paying close attention, which you get served very nice platter of at the beginning of the first part, where they basically, there's a really cute moment between Garrick and Bashir where I think Bashir's observing Garrick and talking to Zeal about him, and this is adorable. But anyway, Laura said that when Zeal kisses Garrick, the medical symbol is right between them in the background. Symbolism.
Oh, I'm taking that and running with it.
That's awesome. And
yes, thank you, Laura.
DS9er fan 2 said the same thing, like Zeal wouldn't have been as attached if there were other Cardassians around, but
that's kind of my thing as well.
But I think she is desperate to have some connection to her Cardassian side. Yeah. I also love that there is a whole layer of, like, it's not, because normally, I mean, and I say this with experience as someone who has been in those sort of relationships before, sometimes it can be a rebellion thing against the parental units. Not always, but sometimes. But they twist this to the sense that, like, she doesn't necessarily care about rebelling against her dad, but Garrick wants to rebel against her dad and pisses him off with it. And it's delightful to watch.
It's delicious, yeah.
My favorite moment of the whole thing is when Gul Dukat basically confronts him about their relationship. And shoves him across one of the balconies on the promenade, and Garrick just stands up. He's like, "Ooh, that was good for my back. Thank you."
Yes.
We love it.
Brilliant.
It's amazing. And then Astro threw in the same thing, I think right before I said it too. Maybe they wouldn't have been together if Garrick and Dukat didn't hate each other so much. We have the irresistible bad boy. Trump.
Irresistible.
But there is a whole other layer to Garrick's plotline in this episode where he ends up a prisoner, and we get to see him as a simple tailor being able to rig a transponder device. And I think it's great to see some vulnerability from Garrick. I was curious what you thought about that.
Always love those sorts of reveals when there's a sense of vulnerability that's another layer to the character. And the actor did a fantastic job. I thought, I don't have claustrophobia, but I feel like that's a fairly accurate portrayal. And he was super vulnerable and clearly uncomfortable, but he pushes through that in such a great way. It was interesting to see. And I can't remember if we hear why he has it.
No, I think there was an allusion to some trauma that had happened to him in the past, but nothing really beyond that. But I mean, when he sees that as like his duty both to in Auburn-Tane, but also it's like they all have roles that they can do, and he wants to be helpful, and he can do this. And I just think it's really, really good. Okay, so transitioning, you talked about the Worf thing, and Astro mentioned I like the Garrick Worf dynamic at the end of the episode. Love. The end. Yeah, you had a note in here about the Klingon.
Right. Yeah. So I love the beginning. The ending was great too, but the beginning of the episode, I think it's the cold open when he and Worf are in the ship. And Garrick's like trying to practice his lying and convince Worf he wants to join Starfleet. And I'll be damned if I didn't write in my notes, like right before he said I was lying, I wrote, wow, Garrick wanting to join Starfleet is the weirdest thing I've ever heard. But like, I believed him. I don't know why. That's the dumbest thing to possibly believe.
It's Garrick.
But he's so good. But then there's that moment when he has to convince Worf to not turn around. And he, once again, Garrick proves you can get a Klingon to do absolutely anything by threatening their honor.
It's so good.
So
great.
But I am not an honorable man. But you are. You understand what it is. And Worf's like, okay.
Okay. I love that. Okay. We're gonna get to Worf in a second. Just a couple of things in the chat. The chat brain remembered we have Def Dog and Baka mentioned there was a punishment about him getting locked in closets as a child. Okay. So that was, and then Laura said that they read somewhere that Andy Robinson, the actor, has claustrophobia. So
wow.
And we're all collectively weeping about Garrick's need for approval from his dad.
Wow. Yeah. Oh, that was kind of sad that he didn't really get that closure.
Yeah. So speaking of Klingons and honor, I demand honor. The fighting bit with the Jem'Hadar and Worf in this is intense.
So good. So good. I love that Worf he does not give up. I mean, he goes full on Klingon warrior and beats him. Like hell to the
to the point that Jem'Hadar are like, respect.
Jem'Hadar, like, they don't show much like emotion, but he's like, I will not fight anymore.
Yeah. Exactly. Thank you, Astro. No worries. Yay. And Christoph, sorry, we did this an hour earlier just this week because of holiday schedules and plans. So no problem at all. It's being recorded and I'll post it after this. So, and then we get Martok, which we love.
Yeah.
He's so good.
I loved him.
Yay. I'm so glad. My loyalty to Martok runs deep.
Nice.
Okay, what? I think we touched on... Dukat. Gul Dukat. Please, Samantha, tell us about Gul Dukat in this set of episodes.
He is awful. I think I finally get the clincher of he's going that direction. He's not He's not gone any kind of road to redemption, which I had kind of secretly hoped would happen. And yeah, he's awful. So finally I know how what his deal is.
DS Snyder and Jedi are very proud of you.
I mean, like, I knew clearly he was a bad guy, but
well,
like,
I think I read it. It was from an interview. I don't think it was the documentary, where might have been Ira Stephen Bear or Ronald D. Moore. One of them said that kind of up until this episode, they had been toying with the possibility that he could be like one of these secret protagonists, that comes out in the end. But then as they were building this episode, they were just like, no, screw it. We've got enough complex.
Yeah.
Like, let's just have a good bad guy,
Yeah. And well, what I kind of liked about it is that, for me at least, watching this, he was on like a, precipice of some kind. Like he would still be kind of a crummy, maybe misogynistic, icky guy, but not like
a great dad either.
Not a great dad, yeah. But maybe do some deed that helps the good side.
Right.
But this was like the precipice of, no, he's going the complete opposite direction, and is like fulfilling those other seeds that we saw, that he's a power hungry, doesn't really care about other people, right. Just wants the power. He'll say anything to get it. And he fully fulfills that characteristic.
Yeah. My question to you, because I think what they did so successfully with him is exactly that, is that they leaned into the ambition. And just to confirm, you are not watching the chat, right? Before I say what I'm about to say. Okay.
I'm not watching the chat.
Just because I think that this idea will come back later. But there is some parallel to another character who is blindly ambitious in Deep Space Nine, who on Bajor, name is Kai Wynn. That I think what I get the sense that what they were trying to do here is, it's like we have that kind of persona on Bajor, and she is successful as a character, and I think like having that on Cardassia, where it's gonna lean into Gul Dukat's desire for power, that he now sees this as like oh man, I can take over. And
yeah, and he's clearly not thinking about anybody but himself, because he's subjecting the entirety of Cardassia to Dominion control.
Yeah. Thanks.
Not a good guy. Not a good guy.
Exactly. Mohammed, also hi. There is no Snape in Dukat. That's probably the best way to phrase it, at least for this crowd.
He is full on Voldemort. No Snape.
Yeah, and Astro, that's exactly what I was thinking of. So, it's great. I love. I don't love hate Dukat as much as I love hate Kai Wynn. I think I just hate Dukat. But it is interesting to see the parallels in their like the fact that their cultures are at war with each other, and yet you still have these two leaders who are very identical. It's interesting.
I hadn't thought of that. I
can't wait for our full psychological analysis of Kai Wynn. All right. All right. I think we touched everything. We got Gul Dukat in there, and
I think so.
But it's kicked off. The Dominion War is now. The Dominion is in the Alpha Quadrant, and
they're here.
They're here.
They're here. Oh man.
Okay, next episode. Dr. Bashir, I presume. This is where Dr. Louis Zimmerman, yay, guest star by Robert Picardo, comes to Deep Space Nine to create a medical hologram based on Dr. Bashir, leading to the revelation that Bashir was genetically modified as a child. And overall, the big sort of things that they lean into is, what they lean into is his relationship with his parents. So... I think I didn't enjoy this episode the first time I watched it because it was so stressful. So I'm very curious what you thought about it. Especially you have liked Bashir as a character, I think, more than I have. So really curious your thoughts on this one. Take it away.
No secret that I am a Bashir fan. So this was interesting. Like, it was leading up to some kind of plot twist or reveal, obviously, from not really the first half of the episode, but the second half, during that moment when he says, "Don't reveal what we did," or "We can't reveal what we did." And I was like, ooh, what did they do? This is going to be interesting. And then it comes out what they did. And I was sort of like, huh. Like, it didn't feel to me like a horribly overdramatic thing. I mean, obviously there's the aspect of the Starfleet expulsion threat that would come from that. So that I get. But from just a sort of character plot list reveal, it didn't hit me as this like, oh no, Bashir's not the same person, or oh, Bashir's this my whole life is a lie because Bashir is something different. Like, It didn't really hit me that way, because like, he's still human, he's still completely biological. He doesn't act exactly like someone who's been genetically enhanced. So like, there was no payoff of anything that he did in prior seasons to me to lead to this. So it felt like kind of this twist for twist's sake.
Interesting.
Because like, the guy has stress dreams about aging and missed a question on the Starfleet exam and has stress dreams about that. He has massive imposter syndrome. Like, it didn't fit as a, oh my God, sort of twist to me. So bottom line is, I still love Bashir.
Okay, fair enough. Because he did remember too, and I think that's the thing, is going back and rewatching, knowing he's a genetic, you do see those things, like the fact that he missed that question intentionally, that he has those stress dreams about not so much like aging, but then you read into it more as it's like the degradation of his body, and that he is hyper aware of his body and his self. Like, I guess knowing that he is, when you go back and watch it, you do see it weaved in a little bit. But
that's what I was interested in. I was wondering if that would be the case.
Yeah, I do think it is. Even, I'm not sure, and I'm pretty sure that they didn't have that as a plan. Like, when they created the character of Bashir, I'm sure that they didn't think we're going to make a genetically modified human who's hiding it for 4 years.
Yeah, and I guess that was sort of clear to me. And I think if you went back and watched it, you could certainly read into a lot, but it didn't feel intentional enough as a first-time viewer going through, you know? So
one of the things that people were wondering, because DS9 fan brought this up, that for the last 200 years, Khan has been a boogeyman for them, and you haven't seen Wrath of Khan or Space Seed, which is a genetically augmented human.
This is true.
So there is that. I mean, you saw the second reboot Star Trek film, which is a Wrath of Khan. But that I think, because they do call out, you wouldn't want to make another at the end, like when they're talking about the implications of it, is that you don't want another Khan Noonien thing. So
yeah. And I heard that, and I definitely have heard the name Khan. Like, I just sort of know that name. And I know there's a lot there. So I was like, oh, I think I might be missing something about why this is a big deal.
But I think too that this may have been more world building. I don't think you're missing out on something. I think this is them introducing the idea that Starfleet is against genetic augments and having that philosophical discussion as part of the world building for Starfleet. Because Bad Panda Bear pointed out that they like the discussion of genetic engineering and how you regulate it while being fair to children who don't have a choice. That I don't think it does anything positive or negative for Bashir's character, but philosophically it's an interesting story.
Definitely. And that brings up point I think you had of, the parenting aspect, the theme of having to make those sorts of impossible choices as a parent. Do you do something to help them if they have some kind of genetic defect that is causing them to fall behind, and how do you address the unforeseen consequences, positive or negative, of doing something like that.
Yeah. And credit to Sid, the actor. Like, he does such a good job when he kind of reveals to O'Brien what he was like as a kid before they did that. And I think it adds a layer to Bashir that is very believable, because then you understand that sort of cocky attitude that he had, especially earlier in the seasons, because he's like fighting that imposter syndrome.
Exactly. Yeah. And I loved O'Brien in this episode.
Yeah.
The way he stands by him in that scene and just kind of goes, all right, so like, it's a little bit after schooly, like, we love you anyway type thing, but it's O'Brien, and he and Bashir like kind of knock heads sometimes, but I just loved how O'Brien, his true self is like, you are one of my best friends. And yeah.
I love the, we'll come back to the other, I have two things I want to talk about. Let's talk about the first one because I want to dwell on the second one, but I love the reveal. Actually, Jedi walked into the room when I was watching this and I was like, oh snap, I forgot about this. This is like literally how I reacted, because when the parents come in to talk to him and then they have their like closure where they're like, look, we're never going to tell the secret. Like, it's not your fault. We take responsibility, but we won't ruin your career for you. And he hugs them and then walks out. And then Zimmerman and O'Brien come out from around the corner and they're like, what the hell was that? Like, that is such a good twist.
Yeah.
I love that.
That was awesome.
But talking about the friendship, we got to mention the interviews that they do of Bashir, and they get to O'Brien and they're like, and he's like, this is like, he's not going to read this, are they? And they're like, no, you can be candid. And he's like, okay, he's one of the kindest, best humans I've ever known and will ever know in my life. He's like, but you're sure he's never going to hear this, right?
That was such a cute moment. Oh, I loved it.
Yeah. Love it. Laura brought in a good point too, and then D.S. Snyder will get to the B plot for sure. But Laura mentioned they did a great thing with the accents in this episode as well, because Bashir has like a very sort of what would be considered a posh accent, and his dad has a more working class accent, and so they do show. And I think that's like that they have the top layer of the genetic modification ethics discussion, but then they also have this sub layer of the parents projecting their own desire for success onto their kids. Yeah. That his dad has just put on this front his whole life and has had Bashir. So anyway.
And Bashir's mentioned that, throughout the series, and I always assumed it was a cultural thing.
Yeah.
And sort of a comment on that. But it's more than that. It's, maybe it's a metaphor or whatever for that, but his need to succeed has been influenced and brought on by his parents.
Yeah. We could keep talking about this for ages, but we got to talk about, so you have one quick question I want to answer. Is the EMH on Voyager as we speak? The answer to that is yes. And I believe at this time Voyager hasn't contacted Starfleet yet. So they mentioned that they want to make a LMH, a long-term medical hologram, because we as the viewers know that there is a long-term medical hologram, but not necessarily that Starfleet knows that there is. I think, if I'm getting the timelines right.
It was so fun to see Zimmerman / Doctor on, and it's funny. I was like, the cold open started, and I was like turning away to like, I don't know, get a drink or something. And I heard his voice and I was like, hold the phone.
Awesome.
I just hear the doctor, and I like rewound it.
So good. He's so good. We love him. And he provides an excellent plot device in this episode as being the foil for Rom and Lita. And now we can talk about Rom and Lita finally getting together, which is just delightful.
Yay, but also I was pulling my hair out.
God, I know.
Rom.
Actually screaming at the television.
Yeah, exactly. Because also I was like, that's me.
Oh.
But yeah, you just look at it, you're like, come on, it's so clear. But when you're in that moment, it's like, it just, those words do not come out.
It's so good. Cute. He does such a great job of it. And when he doesn't, and he still doesn't say it, and you think he's going to, and you're just like, oh, God. And then we also got the great backstory of Rom's with Nog's mother. That broke my heart, and just, yeah.
That was really heartbreaking.
And that Quark was almost just trying to save him from going through that heartbreak again, in a mean brotherly way, but
yeah.
But great closure when you just hear screaming coming down the hallway, extended Ferengi screaming. And then it ends with him confessing his love, and we love it.
Oh yeah, it's so good.
So good. Okay, we need to get moving.
Yes.
The next, any last thing that I didn't mention before I put
No, I don't think so.
Okay. So simple investigation. This one we're just gonna spend like 2 minutes on. This is basically Odo meets and falls in love with a woman, and there's a whole wrapped up with the Orion Syndicate. It's basically a sleeper agent plot line. Mm-hmm. I think it's a good exploration of Odo's character, and if you are a fangirl or fan person of Odo, it's always nice to see your characters get a little bit of action. But it's just not that interesting.
It's really not. I was sort of watching it like confused the whole time. Yeah. I was like, why did they tell her to talk like she's walking through sand? Like, her voice is like this the whole time. And she's not really that interesting.
Well, I think a couple people in the chat like the episode. It's not like bad. I think it's very kind of thrown in there. I think it's just Bacchus says it's called ASMR, Samantha.
Oh, see, I don't. ASMR videos make me really uncomfortable.
And Sky, hi Sky, says, yes, I've always wanted a trading card of Odo's first time. Which yeah.
I don't know. It just not my favorite.
Yeah, that's okay. Because we have plenty to close out on. I mean, it's just to kind of, they are obviously trying to add more layers to Odo. Mm-hmm. That he may be a changeling again, but he still has those desires that he felt as a human. Yeah. So we will see it again, and they do answer like, "Why don't you do this?" And he's like, "That's because it's who I am," which is kind of sweet. Mm-hmm. And his bedroom eyes. Yeah. Odo's bedroom eyes. Okay, last episode. This is business as usual. So, despondent over his financial woes, Quark allows his cousin Gala, to talk him into joining the arms sales business. And O'Brien struggles with taking care of baby Yoshi, who won't stop crying everywhere he puts it down. Yet the one who owns a moon, cousin Gala. So this is a pretty intense episode for it being a Ferengi focused one. Yeah,
it really is.
Really curious of your thoughts on this one.
Yeah, so at first Quark makes this arrangement to work with his cousin, and I was like, okay, it's just Quark trying to get rich quick again to pay off his debts. And then like as it goes on, and it really revealed like their war profiteering, like Um, and that's not cool. And the thing with Quark is like, Quark, he has a conscience, and I just wish he'd use it more often. Um,
A great
because
summary.
by the end of the episode, yeah, exactly. That's like the summary of Quark's character. Because he really, I mean, he does the right thing again.
Yeah.
But it takes him so long to get to that point. But I just love that he always gets there.
Yeah, he does. And I think it's a very well written episode. It's, for me, it's essentially that film Lord of War. If anyone's ever seen it, it came out in 2005 with Nicolas Cage, and it was touted by Amnesty International as like a good look into the realities of the arms dealing business. This is obviously a little more lighthearted than Lord of War, but along the same themes of just people who get mixed up in stuff and who end up becoming true villains that are responsible for the deaths of thousands and thousands, if not millions of people, and how they reconcile their conscience, and if they reconcile their conscience, and how many people there are who do not.
Yeah. Because clearly his cousin, I forget his name, Gala, cousin Gala, has zero. I mean, the way they're around that table making the deal, he's like going through the list like he's talking about groceries.
Yeah.
I mean, it was chilling the way he was like, oh, well, we could do gas and kill 20 million people. That we could, or maybe we could try this. And it's like, you're talking.
Yeah.
Like, that was really interesting.
What I really like about this episode is the fact that we have this, I think why a lot of people, and I know certainly myself, love Deep Space Nine is because of the ensemble characters and how they all really are a family that we just want to be a part of. And I think this is a great demonstration of that when they basically, like especially Jadzia, but DS9 as a whole starts shunning Quark for these decisions, and he starts to realize like that his friendships aren't superficial like he thought, and he does care what they think about him, and they care about the decisions he makes. And I just think it's very deftly done.
Absolutely. I completely agree that those moments with Jadzia were kind of heartbreaking to watch Quark realize those, he's jeopardized some friendships, and he has another, It's a Wonderful Life moment of these people are in my life and they're important to me.
Yeah. I feel like the acting and the writing was very natural when Quark is still mixed up in it, but he's trying to win his friendships back, and he shows up at Jadzia's door with the tango wheel, and she's just like, she's like, I don't want it. If you're still doing this, like, there's nothing you can do to make this better. I've told you why I'm mad at you, and you need to fix that before you fix anything else.
Exactly.
It's effective.
Very.
So let's talk about O'Brien and Yoshi.
So cute. Oh.
Okay. So O'Brien can't put Yoshi down without him bursting into tears. And so he's working with him. He's playing darts with it. Oh, we didn't mention the dart thing at the end of the genetic.
Oh, that's right. O'Brien's I don't want you to go easy on me. And then Bashir's like, and O'Brien's like, okay, you're going to shoot from over there.
I just thought that was so great. That it was like he still wants to play darts with him. He's just going to, you have to do it from way over there. That's Perfect. Just delightful. But yeah, I mean, he's playing darts with him. He can't get him to stop crying, and everyone's trying to help, but he's just trying to balance it all. And I mean, and there's that.
Like he puts him in the little like thing with the blinky lights in the bridge. And the whole crew's like speaking softly.
It's just, I mean, it's so great. And we just get a great scene at the end with Worf.
It was such a good scene.
Yeah, so Worf comes in and O'Brien's basically like, I gotta go get some, like, just hold the baby. He's gonna cry. Don't take it personally. I'll be right back. And then he walks away and there's silence.
I almost cried. It was so cute to see Worf, just big old Worf, holding a little baby. And then Worf like has this really genuinely what's the word? Just like personal moment where he's like, I never saw Alexander as a baby, and it's one of my biggest regrets. And it's very disarmingly open for Worf to say something like that. And I loved that little moment.
Yeah, it's really, really sweet. It's fabulous. So, yeah, good episode. Good, weirdly serious Ferengi episode, but
yeah,
very effective.
Very.
It shows the dark side of a species that prioritizes capitalism. On that note, all right. So, any final thoughts?
I don't think so.
I will say I forgot to mention this too. Our discussion about Khan and the genetic modifications. If anyone gets a chance, the second season of the Pod Directive, the Star Trek podcast, just started, and they did an episode with Paul Scheer for this past week where they discuss Wrath of Khan, and it's delightful. So definitely check that out. It's called the Pod Directive, and it's the most recent episode. They're all great. It's hosted by Paul F. Tompkins and Tawny Newsome, so check it out. So next week, I think we're going to finish season 5.
Really?
Yeah. It'll be
Yay.
like 8 episodes, so assuming we can get through them, but...
Should be.
Yeah. So we have episodes 19 through 26 of season 5. So this is Ties of Blood and Water, Ferengi love songs, Soldiers of the Empire, Children of Time, Blaze of Glory, Empok Nor, In the Cards, and Call to Arms, which is the season finale. I will double check about if it's a 2-part that leads into season 6, so we may cut it off before that 2-part, but I will confirm afterwards unless the chat hive mind knows it off the top of their heads right now. But yeah, we're getting through it. Just 2 more seasons left.
So exciting.
So good. All right. Well, thank you, Samantha. Thanks to everyone in the chat. I hope you have a good day. This was fun. Delightful. I am going to send people, because we are an hour earlier, to check out Rivals of Waterdeep if they're still live. I believe they are. I don't know if I can raid. Yes. All right. So I will send you all that way. Thanks again, everyone, for hanging out with us, and we will see you all next time. All right. Live long and prosper. Have a good one, everyone. Bye.